Jesus, who is mostly silent throughout his trial and throughout his crucifixion. From the moment that Jesus is arrested, he says very few words. Jesus does not defend himself or debate or converse with Caiaphas, doesn't debate with Pontius Pilate. He's not debating with the Pharisees, the ones who are more responsible for his death. Jesus is not entering into debates or conversations with the crowd or with those who are taunting him and mocking him as he hangs from the cross. Would have wonderful answers to their taunts and their mocking. Part of the reason why Jesus does this is, as St. Matthew says, so that the scriptures might be fulfilled, that it had to happen this way. But Matthew gives us a picture of a Jesus who is filled with sorrow and distress in his soul, and there's really in some ways nothing more to be said now. His actions and what God the Father will do for him in 3 days, that will speak and say everything that needs to be said. Focusing a little bit on some of the taunts of the crowd as Jesus hangs from the cross. The taunts of the crowd, which Jesus gives no answer to, are kind of filled with half-truths, things that are only partially true and are very tempting to believe, as all half-truths are. One point, the crowd says to Jesus, "Save yourself." Another point, the crowd says, "Come down off the cross if you're God's son." At another point, the crowd says, "Let God rescue you if he wants to, if he loves you." And in some ways, there's great responses to all those things. Save yourself. Oh, I can't save myself. Only God can save me, can bring me into heaven. I'm a human being, I can't save myself. None of us can save ourselves. Come down off the cross if you're God's son. Well, I am God's son, but being human, I can't take the nails out of my hands and come down. And actually, it's more difficult and more powerful and a greater message and sign that I am God's son if I stay on the cross. That more so shows that I'm God's son. Let God rescue you now if he wants to. Well, God does want to rescue me, and he will rescue me, but not right now. 3 days, we'll talk again. I'll see you in 3 days. He'll rescue me then. I am God's son. He loves me. He wants to rescue me, but he's not going to save me from my sufferings right now. In some sense, there are good potential answers to the taunts of the crowd towards Jesus. Their overall assumption is simply, God would not let his son suffer like this. God would rescue him. Again, somewhat of a false presumption. I spoke a couple weeks ago about how false presumptions lead to false conclusions. That's their presumption. He can't be God's son because he's suffering like this. Jesus' response is, I am God's son. God lets his son and his daughters and his sons suffer like this. And sometimes even worse. He lets them suffer like that. It doesn't mean he won't save them. Doesn't mean he won't rescue them. Doesn't mean he doesn't love them or doesn't want to rescue them. They're still his children, but he lets them suffer. Jesus gives us that example. I think for us, we can sometimes fall into the temptation of thinking like the crowd, of thinking like the people who taunt and mock Jesus. Thinking that, God would not really let me suffer like this if he really loved me. It's very tempting to think that way because it's filled with half-truths. And so sometimes those temptations, those taunts of the crowd become our temptations as well. Save yourself. I can't save myself. I can't save myself from depression. I can't save myself from my angry feelings. I can't save myself from the loss of my job. I can't save myself from sorrow. I can't save myself from disappointment. Can't save myself from sickness. There's no way I can save myself from death. I can't save my children from growing up. I can't save them from getting hurt. I can't save them from being exposed to mean and dangerous people. I can't save them from making bad choices as adults. I can't save them from giving up the faith. I can't save my spouse from not trying anymore in the marriage. I can't save my relatives or my in-laws from being mean people. I'm powerless over many things in my life. Many situations I do have control over, but there are many situations in my life that I can't save myself from. In the end, only God can save me, and he will, even and ultimately from death. Come down off the cross if you're God's son. Well, I'm not going to come down off this cross, even though I am a child of God. It's actually better to stay on the cross. I can try to avoid the cross. That is, I can try to avoid difficult situations, tough conversations with my spouse, with my children, with my parents. I can try to avoid confrontations with people, but it's better to confront and to talk. I can try to avoid the cross and come down by avoiding how I feel, by just burying it inside. I can try to avoid the cross of my past, any abuse I may have suffered. I can try to bury my anger, my resentment, my grief, my sorrow, my depression, my fear. But it's actually better to feel. I'm going to stay on the cross. I'm not coming down off the cross. Let God rescue you now if He wants to. Well, God does want to rescue me. He will rescue me, but in His time, and not in my time, not right now. And more importantly, just because He doesn't rescue me right now, doesn't mean He doesn't love me. Doesn't mean He doesn't care, doesn't mean He's not present, doesn't mean He's not all-powerful. It's tempting in many ways to think like the crowd and to follow their taunts and their mocking. Yet it's better for us to stay on the cross. Speaking about that, some different words, James Hillman is a Jungian psychologist, an American. He talks about how it's important for us, in a sense, to stay on the cross, to feel what we feel and to go through some of those difficult issues in our lives. He says, almost always, deep growth takes place through the opposite, our death, our losses, our dark nights of the soul. Now, it's not that these are in and of themselves good. It is just that when we listen to them, we grow deep. They build up our souls. Inferiorities and failures, crosses, are nothing to be buried as private as past shames. They are to be listened to. They are entries into the depths of our soul. Good idea to think that the cross and you staying on the cross is an entry into the depth of your soul. It builds your soul, it builds your character, it makes you a much better person. You grow deep that way. Just like Jesus grew deep by His own agony in the garden and by His own suffering on the cross. The temptation is always for us to get down off the cross, to avoid difficult feelings, to avoid confrontations and tough situations. That's always a temptation, to run away and just not think about it, bury it somewhere else, to get down off the cross. But it's better for us to stay on the cross. At least that's what Jesus teaches us, and especially this week. Sometimes we forget that God Himself stayed on the cross. I encourage you then, maybe especially over the course of this Holy Week, this most holy week of the year, to stay on the cross, whatever that might be for you. To not run away, to feel what it is you need to feel, to confront what it is you need to confront. Stay on the cross. Don't stay alone on the cross. You can bring your spouse, you can bring a friend, someone you trust a lot. Bring someone else there on the cross too. But also bring Jesus with you. He knows what it's like to be on the cross. He's been there Himself.